There is a sentence that has quietly reshaped how an entire generation makes decisions. It is not a lie. It is not even technically false, but it might be one of the most expensive sentences in the English language. The sentence is this: it's just $499 a month. 4 words that turn a $25,000 decision into something that feels smaller than a grocery bill. And the strange part is, almost nobody notices the moment this sentence rewires their brain. It doesn't feel like a trick. It feels like relief. It feels like the number finally makes sense. But somewhere between that relief and the signature on the page, a question got swapped for a different one, and that swap is going to matter more than almost anything else in this story. Welcome back to Zaki Invests, where we don't just talk about money, we talk about the quiet psychological moves that decide who keeps it and who doesn't. Today, we're going to watch 2 people walk into the exact same dealership, hear the exact same sentence from the exact same salesperson, and walk out with 2 completely different financial futures. Not because one of them was smarter, not because one of them earned more, because of one single question, asked or not asked, in a conversation that lasted less than 30 seconds. Let's meet them. Sarah is 28, working in marketing, saving carefully, trying to do things right. Michael is 31, an electrician, practical, not particularly financially literate, but he picked up one habit a few years back that he never let go of. Today, on the same Saturday afternoon in 2 different branches of the same dealership chain, they are both looking at the same car. A $25,000 sedan. Reliable, mid-range, nothing flashy. The kind of car that fills parking lots everywhere. Sarah sits across from a salesperson named Danny. Danny's not a villain. Danny's just doing his job, and his job has trained him to answer one question better than any other question. What monthly payment works for you? Sarah tells him she can comfortably handle around $500 a month. Danny nods, taps at his screen, and a few minutes later turns it around to show her $499 a month. Sarah feels something settle in her chest. Relief. That number fits. That number is real to her in a way the $25,000 sticker price never quite was. She signs. 72 months. She drives home in a car that, on paper, she can afford. At the same time, across town, Michael sits across from a salesperson named Priya. Priya runs the exact same script. She quotes him the exact same number, $499 a month over 72 months. But Michael does something different. He doesn't say yes, and he doesn't say no. He asks a second question, one he learned to ask years ago after watching a coworker get buried by a truck payment that never seemed to end. He asks, what's the total amount I'll pay by the time this loan is finished, and what's the interest rate? Priya, slightly surprised, pulls up the number. At 8% over 72 months, the total cost of that $25,000 car comes out to just over $30,000. Michael asks one more question. What would the payment look like over 48 months instead? Priya runs it. The monthly payment jumps to about $610. Higher, noticeably higher, but the total cost drops to just under $29,000. Michael sits with that difference for a moment, then asks for the 48-month option, even though it stretches his monthly budget a little tighter than he'd like. Same car, same day, same starting offer. 2 completely different decisions, and the only thing that separated them was which question got asked out loud. Here's what's actually happening underneath this, because it isn't random and it isn't really even about cars. Researchers studying what they call the hedonics of debt have found something remarkable about how people evaluate loans. When people are shown different loan structures, they consistently overweight 2 things: the size of the monthly payment and the size of the final payment. And they consistently underweight one thing: the total duration of the loan. In plain language, our brains are wired to ask, does this number feel manageable right now? and almost never wired to ask, how long will I be carrying this, and what does that length actually cost me? The monthly payment is vivid, it's immediate, it's the number you'll see every single month for years. The total cost, by contrast, is abstract. It lives somewhere in the future, discounted and blurry, easy to wave away with a phrase like, "I'll deal with that later," or "That's just how loans work." This is not an accident that dealerships stumbled into. It is a deliberate strategy refined over decades. Because dealers and lenders figured out something simple. If you can control which question the customer is asking, you can control the deal without ever needing to lie. Sarah was never lied to. Every number Danny gave her was true, but by leading with the monthly payment and never volunteering the total cost or the interest rate unless asked, the entire conversation was quietly steered away from value and toward affordability. A $25,000 car became just $499 a month, and that reframing did something subtle but powerful. It changed the question in Sarah's head from, "Is this car worth $25,000 to me?" to, "Can I fit this number into my monthly budget?" Those two questions sound similar. They are not the same question at all. You can comfortably answer yes to the second question while making a genuinely poor financial decision, because the second question never asks you to think about what you're actually paying in total, or what else that money could have done for you. Let's jump forward now, 3 years later. Sarah is still making that $499 payment right on schedule every single month, exactly as promised. But something else has been happening in the background that she never fully understood on the day she signed. Cars depreciate fast, especially in the first few years, and a 72-month loan is long enough that the car's value drops faster than her loan balance does. This is what's known as being upside down, or having negative equity, when you owe more on a loan than the thing you bought is actually worth. 3 years in, her car is worth maybe $13,000. She still owes almost $15,000. If she needed to sell it tomorrow, she would have to pay money out of her own pocket just to get rid of it. And there's a second consequence, quieter, but just as real. That monthly payment, sitting on her credit report every month for 6 years, has been counted against her by every lender she's approached since. When she and her partner started looking at apartments and eventually a small starter home, the mortgage broker ran the numbers and told her gently that her debt-to-income ratio was too tight because of the car payment still stretching 3 years into the future. The car she bought to make her life easier had quietly become the reason a bigger, more important goal had to wait. Michael, meanwhile, made his higher monthly payment for 4 years instead of 6. It was tighter, some months tighter than he would have liked, but at the 4-year mark, the loan was gone, paid in full. No more payment, no more interest, no more anything. He kept driving the same car for another 2 years, payment-free, and redirected that $610 a month into a combination of an emergency fund and a retirement account. By the time Sarah is still writing checks for a depreciating asset, Michael has an emergency fund that could cover 8 months of expenses and a retirement account that has had 2 extra years to grow, completely untouched by any car payment at all. When he went to apply for a mortgage that same year, the lender looked at his debt-to-income ratio and saw almost no consumer debt weighing him down. He qualified easily. Neither of them is a villain in this story, and neither of them is a genius. Sarah isn't reckless. She's disciplined, careful with her money in almost every other part of her life. Michael isn't a financial expert. He's a guy who picked up one habit almost by accident after watching someone else get hurt by not having it. The entire difference between their outcomes traces back to a 30-second exchange in a dealership, and specifically to one extra question that Michael asked and Sarah didn't. That's the part of this that should genuinely unsettle you. It wasn't income, it wasn't intelligence, it wasn't willpower. It was a script, a conversational default that one of them had installed in his head and the other hadn't. And here's the thing, this mechanism didn't stay in car dealerships. It has quietly spread into almost every corner of how we buy things now. Phones used to be something you bought outright, or at least understood the full price of the device. Now they're $25 or $30 a month, folded invisibly into your phone bill, and most people genuinely could not tell you the total price of the device they're carrying in their pocket. Furniture stores offer payment plans on couches. Mattress companies, of all things, now advertise monthly financing because someone in a marketing meeting realized that $20 a month sells better than $800, even when the $800 version, paid in cash, is cheaper in total. This is sometimes called the subscriptionization of purchasing, the slow transformation of one-time purchases into endless small recurring payments, and it benefits exactly one party consistently, the seller. Every time a purchase gets converted from a single price into a monthly number, the total cost tends to quietly increase, and the buyer's ability to compare one option against another gets quietly harder because now you're not comparing prices, you're comparing monthly payments structured in completely different ways by completely different sellers. There's a deeper psychological reason this works on all of us, and it's worth naming directly, because naming it is most of what breaks its power. Our brains are built to discount the future. A cost that happens today feels enormous. A cost that gets spread out over 6 or 7 years feels almost weightless, even if the total added up is dramatically larger. This is the same mental machinery that makes it easier to eat dessert tonight and worry about your health later, or spend on a credit card today and worry about the statement next month. The monthly payment trap isn't really about cars or phones or mattresses. It's about a mismatch between how our brains are wired to feel cost and how cost actually behaves in the real world over time. The 72-month loan didn't just cost Sarah more money, it cost her more money precisely because it was engineered to feel like it was costing her less. There's also a second layer to this that most people never notice, and it has to do with comparison. When every seller quotes a monthly number instead of a total price, shopping around stops working the way you think it does. Sarah, if she had visited 3 different dealerships, would have received 3 different monthly payments, each built from a different combination of term length, interest rate, and add-ons. Comparing $499 a month against $520 a month feels like a clean, simple comparison, but underneath it might be a 4-year loan competing against an 8-year loan, or a low interest rate hiding a padded price, or an extended warranty quietly folded into the payment. The monthly number flattens all of that complexity into something that looks easy to compare, when in reality it's almost impossible to compare correctly unless you strip it back down to total cost, term, and rate side by side. This is precisely why the trick works so well on people who are otherwise careful shoppers. It doesn't feel like you're being rushed or misled. It feels like you're doing exactly what a smart consumer is supposed to do, comparing offers. You're just comparing the wrong number. It's worth sitting with how ordinary this all felt in the moment, because that's the part that should really stay with you. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody rushed anyone into anything. Danny didn't do anything Priya didn't also do, in the sense that both of them simply answered the question they were asked. The difference was entirely on the customer's side of the table, in the question that got asked in the first place. That's a strange kind of trap, one that doesn't require any deception at all to work. It just requires silence, the absence of one follow-up question, repeated across millions of transactions every single day. So what do you actually do with this? The fix isn't complicated, but it does require making yourself uncomfortable for about 30 seconds at the exact moment when everyone else in the room wants you to feel comfortable. The next time you're about to make a large purchase, particularly anything financed over more than a year or two, ask 2 questions out loud, even if it feels awkward. even if the person across from you seems mildly annoyed that you're slowing things down. First, what is the total amount I will pay by the time this is fully paid off, including all interest and fees? Not the monthly number, the total number. Second, what would the payment look like if I shortened the term, and how much would I save in total by doing that? These two questions alone would have changed Sarah's outcome entirely. They cost nothing to ask, they take less than a minute to get answered, and they force the conversation back to the question that actually matters, which was never, "Can I afford this payment?" but "Is this the best way to spend this amount of money?" This is also why shortening a loan term, even when it raises your monthly payment, is often one of the most underrated financial moves available to an ordinary person. It feels backwards because everything about how these deals are presented trains you to want the payment to go down, not up. But a slightly higher payment for a shorter period frequently means you keep more money overall, get out from under debt faster, and free up your borrowing capacity sooner for things that actually matter: a home, an education, a business. The goal was never to win the conversation about the monthly payment. The goal was always to own the thing you bought, instead of quietly letting it own you for the next 6 or 7 years. Sarah and Michael never met each other. They never compared notes. They have no idea that a 30-second exchange in a dealership on the exact same day sent their financial lives in 2 completely different directions. That's what makes this trap so effective. It doesn't announce itself. Nobody signs a form that says, "I am choosing to ignore the total cost of this decision." It just quietly happens, one relieved nod at a time, whenever the monthly number feels small enough to stop asking questions. If there's one thing worth carrying out of this video, let it be this: the monthly payment is not the price. It is a number engineered to make you stop thinking about the price. The next time someone hands you a small number and a big smile, that's exactly the moment to ask the 2 questions that actually matter. If this changed how you'll think about your next big purchase, you know what to do. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.